Hi, everyone. Welcome in. Welcome in. We got a great live today. Gary Palarchik, the Rusted Garden.
Yay! I've been so excited about this interview, guys. It's going to be awesome. Thank you all for coming in and hanging out with us tonight. And yeah, thank you all for. I've noticed we have more members. Do we have more members? Riverdale Gardens is a member. Holy moly. We are getting members in. I didn't notice before. Plus, I've been having issues almost every time we went live. So I hadn't really noticed. So thank you guys for being members of our channel and being here tonight. Make sure you share us out and also give us the thumbs up because that's what gets us in the algorithm.
And everybody from LinkedIn and Twitter, welcome in. Welcome to Grow Big TV. We've been getting a lot of people watching our videos after the lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been really, really awesome. So I just want to say welcome in. And so we're going to show our 6 inches, or actually Common Ground today. Common Ground film. So when people roll on in, and then we'll start the interview with Gary Palarchik. So here is the 2-minute skip it of Common Ground. Hope you guys go check this out.
A new documentary is launching a movement to change our farming practices and restore our soil.
I'm excited to share with you all Common Ground.
This is the single most important story of our lifetime. Now we have the ability to literally stop climate change in its tracks
within less than a generation.
This film actually proposes a solution. They could actually bring the entire planet to carbon neutral.
This is a crazy concept. This is insane.
Common Ground needs to be seen in the White House.
We couldn't not make a second film after Kiss the Ground. I mean, it was a runaway success.
The film is a love letter to our children, all about how we can save their future, but also make sure that the world is thriving for all future generations.
We have to come together and find common ground for common good.
How was the film received? Sold out screening.
It's probably one of the most important films you'll ever see this year.
Go watch Common Ground. Best movie of the year.
It is a movie of our time and the next generations to come.
This movement is catching on like wildfire. What should I do next?
Go see Common Ground!
Awesome. Hope you guys go check that out. It's a lot of good material starting to get out there. A lot of good movies. So it's going to be in all. It's not going to be YouTube yet, but they're like this one's out in the movies. But there's a trilogy. So you got Common Ground. There's also going to be a new one coming out next year with bees, which is really cool. So I'm trying to remember the other movie besides Common Ground. It's 6 inches of soil. And then there's another one I just can't. It's off.
Yeah, I can't think of it right now either. What the name of it would be.
So we have Gary Palarchik, and well, we're going to find out where the Rusted Gardening came from. That name, right? It's a popular YouTube channel dedicated to vegetable gardening and growing food. He focuses on educational content aiming to teach viewers about various aspects of gardening, including seed starting, planting, care, pest and disease management. He also talks about harvesting and, sometimes cooking because, well, you do all this food. You got to do a little talk about cooking, right? His goal is to provide quick to the point videos that help gardeners on all levels. So we're going to welcome in Gary Palarchik. Welcome in, Gary.
Hello. How are you guys?
Hello. Thanks for coming on and hanging out with us tonight.
Very happy to be here.
So the Rusted Garden, how did that name start? Where did you get that? Like, how did that all come?
Well, it's a secret. I can't really talk about it. So I started, I don't know, maybe 12 or 14 years ago. I am not a lazy gardener, but when I'm done a task, I'm done. And very often I would just leave the saw out or the pruners out or the whatever out, and it would rust. And, I was told very often, put your stuff away. And I had to come up with a name, and the Rusted Garden is kind of what stuck. Now, as I got older, I have more appreciation to the name, the Rusted Garden, because as we get older and rusted tools, they still have function, they still have purpose, we still have value. So maybe I kind of relate to the rusty tools more than I did when I first started.
So talking about when you first started, did your parents have a garden? When did you start getting into gardening?
Probably, well, they did, but it was because of my grandfather. So he pretty much, probably second grade. I can't really remember exactly then, the time frame, but I can remember him coming in with his light blue coat on, a can of lime, which he called sweetener, and it was in a blue Maxwell House coffee can. And he'd have a paper bag filled with tomatoes, and he'd just roll in and turn the ground, drop in the tomatoes, throw in the sweetener, as he would call it. And that's kind of what stuck with me. Like I got to see, and then he dropped cucumbers in, just direct seed cucumbers along the back. And I think that was really all that he did. And then he would leave. He still came around. He was a great grandfather, but he didn't just show up for gardening. But real quick, set it up. And I just got kind of the passion then, stuck with me. Loved growing. Wasn't crazy about weeding as a kid, of course. But when I got married, got some space, I got back into it. And that's, been about 30 years now. I've been doing this. I've been gardening, 30 years, pretty much every year.
So have you learned a lot of your gardening techniques from your grandfather? Are most of them information that you would learn from him?
So no, I mean, what I learned from him was don't make it too complicated. Turn the soil, create a planting hole, he would throw in the lime. That's what he'd like to do. Plant the tomato and walk away. So it wasn't elaborate, but it worked. And then when we would go over to his house, he had a garden set up. He was in Camden, New Jersey by the river. So he had sandier soil, and he was growing everything. So I would go over there, get to see what was kind of going on. But what it really sparked was just the interest and the passion. And then I had to kind of adapt, when I came over to Maryland and was growing. But I really think if it wasn't for him showing me what it was, it wouldn't be part of me right now. And that's what I try and get to viewers. I try and just be a channel that's not super chatty, except for my garden ramblings. Just teach people how to garden and encourage them. Even if you just start first year, you plant a garden and you lose 50% of your crops, you still have 50% to eat. And
right.
You got to learn as you go, basically. Watch a couple YouTube videos, read a couple articles, but then get into the dirt and start growing. You're not going to learn until you start.
See, I like that you started in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
At the Jersey tomatoes, that's the greatest place to have a tomato.
Yep.
Have you noticed the difference between tomatoes in Maryland and
I haven't. I mean, I want to believe New Jersey has better tomatoes, but I don't know. I think we just say it a lot. So I don't know.
That's okay. I'm kind of partial to Ohio anyway.
Yeah. I don't know. As long as you're growing fresh, that's so much better than the sterile tasting, freight train designed tomatoes that we get out of the supermarket. So from the garden is the best.
So what inspired you after you had your garden at home and stuff and you went on your own?
Right.
What truly inspired you to get started again? Like to make that move. This is what I'm doing.
Just having the space. I mean, I started in a townhouse with a deck. I built, I had containers, but I built probably like a 2x6 kind of raised bed with 12-inch sides and just started growing tomatoes. And it was just having the space, really. So having it kind of, shown to me by my grandfather, getting to grow up with it. And then as soon as I was in the position to have some sunlight and some space, I started growing. Then I moved to my second house, had a 1/4 acre, and now I'm at, the forever home. And when my kids moved out, and went on, they're 25 and 28. Instead of downsizing, we upsized to 2 acres, and it's been great, and it was a lot of fun because I could take 25 years of experience, ups and downs, mistakes, successes, and I truly had a blank slate, just a rectangle piece of property, and I could get growing. But it was just having the space. So I just started kind of getting back into it.
So when did you start YouTube?
I think maybe 2010 or 2011. And it was one of those things where I wanted to just make a video. The first video I kept, it's the worst video ever. It's like, I can probably remember what I said. I'm back from vacation. Now it's time to tend the garden. Like who says that? Like that was,
usually people let their gardens die when they're on vacation.
Yeah. So, and I thought to myself, and that was what made me say, you know what, just be yourself. What do you want to do? I want to teach people how to grow. I don't want to tell jokes or do anything like that. Just get started. And, for people that haven't started a YouTube channel or want to use social media, I just encourage you to just do it. Don't copy people. Don't, try and follow formulas. It's great. I've been trying to break the YouTube algorithm for 12 years. Haven't broken it yet. Just create content, have fun with it. And, see what happens, really. So it's been 12 years. And then COVID brought a lot of people in concerned about food. Channel began to grow. I actually retired. I was a mental health therapist at Johns Hopkins, retired from that job. And then I just garden and do YouTube full time now.
So now do you talk to the plants about their mental health?
I do. I love the patients and the people I work with. I couldn't stand the bureaucracy. Like I was just getting tired of the bureaucracy. What I found was mental health and gardening really go right next to each other.
Oh, for sure.
It's a benefit. It's more like if you say, hey, let's sit down and talk about your problems, people step back. But if you say, hey, let's go out in the garden and grow some food, you can go out there and you can get the benefits of mental wellness, which I'll be actually creating videos and doing a series on that in a couple of months. I'm waiting for the garden to get, full size and stuff like that. But there's so much benefit of just getting out into the garden and getting in touch with nature and getting involved in the dirt, talking to the vegetables or talking about the vegetables with neighbors and friends and sharing the food. It is just so much. It's so basic. But I really think it's very powerful. Like if you don't do it, you don't know it. But once you do, you're like, wow, this is good for me.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you there. And I'm one of those people that don't keep hobbies for very long. And this is by far the longest hobby slash thing I love to do I've had for as long as I can remember. So it's something I really, really enjoy to do. And I noticed that you never stop learning about anything. No. Just when you think you got it all figured out, and some guy named Joe comes around and starts talking about the soil and it blows your mind.
It's right. You're right. You continue to learn, and people just don't need to think they have to know everything to get started.
Yeah.
Go out and screw up. The plants are going to grow. Like my best plants, like I have sunflowers that are almost a foot tall. Nature knows what to do. They seeded themselves. I have tomato plants and pepper plants that have sprouted. They survived the frost. They're tiny, but because they're growing how they're supposed to grow, they're fine. They actually handled the frost. I mean, it's just amazing that we can overcomplicate gardening and not just sit back and relax a little bit more. And that's kind of where I think I'm going with the garden. So
Gary, I noticed you said you never sing. Well, that's what I say. If I
We
sing,
were going to do
I
karaoke
talked
tonight, Gary. Didn't you know that?
No, yeah.
right next to plants. We're going to see which one dies first.
All right.
I love when they came out with that. Hey, play Mozart. You're good. I went out there. If I sing Mozart, everything's going to die within seconds.
That's funny. You just go out there and be yourself, right?
That's right. That's right.
Now, before we got started, we started talking about your books.
Mm-hmm.
You've written 2 books, correct?
I have.
A Modern Homestead Garden and Growing an Edible Landscape. Now, where can we purchase these books?
So you can, I mean, Amazon, of course. Some people don't like Amazon, but any online place you can find them. I mean, it's pretty easy. You can get them from me, except before we got started, I was talking about how I need to be a little bit more organized. I've run out of books at my seed shop, so I can't put that out there right now. So I have to order them. But online, anywhere is great. I'm just happy that people are interested in it.
Now, I wanted to dig in a little bit on your Growing an Edible Landscape.
Huh?
That kind of really intrigued me. What do you have in your bushes, Gary?
So, I mean, the first book, well, I'm going to have a drink. Caught me off guard.
I'll get a drink off that one too.
So the second book was meant to kind of be an expansion from the Homestead Garden. And it was really about, if you think about it, we got lawn everywhere.
Yeah.
Why? Do you really want lawn? It's like we were sold this idea of lawns. And I'm not saying get rid of lawns, but get rid of as much lawn as you can. Or look at your landscape as, why are you spending all this money growing grass that doesn't feed anything? It doesn't even help the bad insects, Japanese beetles maybe. Why settle for ornamental bushes that don't do anything? So edible landscape is really taking all that space and looking how to transform it into something edible, using strawberries instead of ivy, using blueberry bushes instead of your ornamentals, for example. You can put in goji berries. You can put in black currants or red currants or white currants. You can put in so many different bushes that fruit, apple trees, dwarf size, grapevines, muscadines, and you can blend it into your landscape and, have a good time and have food. And you can incorporate it in a way too. A lot of times HOAs shun somebody wanting to grow food in their front yard, which I think is a crime. And I could talk an hour about that. But integrate, that food. Like peppers make great ornamental plants in your beds, and they're edible. So does Swiss chard. Swiss chard will grow all season. So it was really about trying to kind of expand where you grow food traditionally in different places in your yard.
Yeah, I really like that idea. I do have a small food forest on like the side of my house, but I have about 2.5 acres. I would essentially love to turn my entire lawn into an edible landscape. That would be amazing. Or even replace the grass with something that bees can pollinate or something like that. That would be my dream, and it would make my mother extremely upset because she lives next door.
I mean, that's the battle. So my lawn, like I don't put any chemicals on my lawn, and it's a lawn with some grass, but it's gone through right now 3 different kinds of blooms: purple flowers, white flowers, yellow flowers. The clover will be rolling in soon. That feeds the honeybees. And I keep it short, but I let it go when the flowers are coming, and it does feed the bees. And it's not, I don't think it's terrible looking, maybe have your mom on the show and we could chat and kind of, break the news to her that it's not as awful as you think. But it really makes a difference, and it will bring in those pollinators for your garden. And most important is, if you don't treat your lawn, you have an endless opportunity to make compost from the grass and the leaves on your property. And, cut grass goes a long way to bringing that organic matter to your garden. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. I like
See,
that.
Gary, this is when you say, Corky, you got to grow bamboo.
No.
Lots and lots of bamboo in that direction.
We have pine trees, but she put them in.
Right.
And it's a very large pine tree trail because she don't want to look at my chickens.
I don't know what to say, man. Chickens are good.
Talk about Goji Berry. Somebody mentioned Shawnee Shave. It was like $42 for a Goji Berry plant.
Mm.
I have never seen that, but what do you think? Let me see if I can find a question.
So the Goji Berry that I bought was, if you go to Home Depot and you see those box plants for like, I think they're $11.99 now. I just bought a Goji that was about this big, put it into a pot, grew it, and now it's 6 feet. It's not really. If you grow a Goji, it's not a little bush. It becomes this big, monstrous thing that you have to hack back all the time. I just hacked mine back. But you don't really have to spend $42. I don't know where she's getting it from, but you can get just a small plant and it takes off. The second year, it's massive. And the Goji berries are good. They're not an amazing flavor, amazing taste, but they're full of vitamins and stuff like that. And if you let them stay on the plant a little bit longer than you think, they get a little bit sweeter. But I don't think anybody's going to necessarily eat them for the taste, but they're going to eat them for the benefit.
And they're great for blood pressure too.
Yeah, they're good. And
really
because they have thorns, so the deer will leave them alone. So it's one plant that you can grow and not have to worry about the deer.
Yeah. I mean, Shawnee, I'm not downing Stark Brothers, but they have a lot of expensive plants. You could probably find something closer to you. Now, it's probably not going to be as big. Or like Tractor Supply might even have your Goji plant, but it might be a twig. And you might have to just wait longer for it to get bigger. But you could try other places that would be more inexpensive. And you might even be able to buy two just in case one doesn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
And Baker's Creek has them too. So you get them at Baker's Creek.
It's important to look around because there's a lot of bad information out there, bad characters, to put it nicely, and people just trying to make a lot of money, off of us.
Gary, talk a little bit about your seed shop.
So I have a seed shop, therustedgarden.com. Basically started that. I started that to actually sell neem oil a long time ago. And I would sell that off of my blog. The blog's in process of being changed over, so there's no place to go for the blog. But I wanted to sell neem oil. And when you would go to Home Depot, you always saw hydrophobic extract of neem, which means they took all the good stuff out of it and they're just selling you an oil. It could be olive oil, it could be whatever. And it annoyed me that people were thinking they were getting neem oil because there's a main chemical in there as a directin that you need to stop chewing insects. So I started selling that. Shopify came along. I saw Shopify and I'm like, all right, well, let me start a seed shop. So I had to go and, some of the seeds I sourced from my garden, most of them I, select and resell. But now I sell seed starting supplies. So you can start seeds indoors, the seeds, the neem oil, fabric pots, and everything really just to kind of get started. And, that's I wouldn't say a passion, but it's a fun project. Like I like being able to kind of sell that stuff. And the prices I think are pretty fair. I have my brother helping me out of New York. So sometimes people know I'm in Maryland, but they see the stuff ship from New York. So he does the seed shop shipping.
What works the best for you as far as organic sprays? I know you said you just used neem oil. Have you used anything else? Like I use garlic constantly on all of my stuff.
Does that work?
So far, I mean, it also makes me stinky.
Yeah.
But so far it works.
And your mom doesn't like garlic, I bet, right?
So that's great. That's great.
It does.
That's where you get that spray from.
So I'll use neem oil for chewing insects. And just a quick history, how it was discovered was the locusts kind of whipped through India and stuff like that. Give me a little room for maybe not being accurate, but they chewed down everything except the neem trees. And that's how somebody recognized that the components in the neem leaves, killed off insects, and that's how it got started. So neem oil has been used for thousands of years. So organic, I like it, and I'm always cautious. You see stuff now, organic this, organic that. It's not always the best stuff. Anyway, neem oil for chewing insects. I use hydrogen peroxide to clean and spray the leaves of my tomato plants. Kills off fungus. I'll use it on my pepper plants when I need to. I will use hydrogen peroxide sometimes on my squash, or I'll use baking soda spray on that. And then on my cucumbers and beans, I use peppermint spray, which repels spider mites and really makes a difference. And I've been doing that for several years. So
does
those
it possibly repel cucumber bugs? Because those are my arch nemesis.
So no, it doesn't. But what I do for the cucumber beetles, and any insect does, it could be organic, not organic. They both kill bees and stuff. So whatever you choose, but put the dust on the outer leaves of your cucumber plants, because the cucumber beetles are so active, they will crawl through that and you will kill them off in a night. You don't need to douse your whole cucumber plant. You don't need to douse the flowers. Just put them on the outer leaves and the cucumber beetles will run through it. And you could use spinosad if you want to stick with organic, and that's pretty effective.
Okay. Yeah,
Gary,
I definitely want to do just organic in my garden. I don't want anything else.
Have you used Surround?
Say that again?
Have you used Surround?
No. What's the main chemical in there? I probably use that. Do you know?
It's a clay.
It's a clay.
But I can't remember the name of the clay. But
that's COALIN, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So I've purchased it. I'm looking to use it on my apple trees, but I've not used it on the vegetables.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You're going to love it. I have used that and never really had any kind of problem with any kind of insect damage at all.
I haven't used it on my apple trees yet.
Right.
I got it in the middle of the year last year. And then this year I plan on using it on my apple trees. And then they say you can even use it when you are transferring your plants, if you from your grow room to the outside, you could put on it and keep them from getting sunburned.
Oh, really? So they'll stop the UV rays from damaging the leaves of the plants.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, then I'm going to have to make sure I get it out and use it.
Jen, it's called Surround.
Yeah.
Surround.
I mean, there's always, I don't know, like people, and if you're using it and you're saying it works, you're like, whatever, the 50th person, but being able to talk directly, I'm like, well, then it's got to work, Here's a testimony for it.
Well, so far it has. The only problem I have is it clogs up my garden sprayer because it kind of gets thick. So you kind of have to find the right, I don't know, consistency before you spray it. But for the most part, it really worked. Not everything is 100% foolproof, but it did keep a lot of the bugs from eating my squash and zucchini and stuff like that. Now I still saw bugs, but not near as many.
Well, I mean, the whole goal is like when I, talk with people and do the videos, is you just want to manage the damage down. Like you can't always stop stuff 100%, but you can greatly reduce the amount of damage and they can take their share and you still get plenty and stuff like that. And maybe people listening, I just want to stress, when you get an infestation, sometimes you have to go to the stronger stuff, even organic, the stronger stuff, just to get it under control. A lot of times people sometimes feel like they did something wrong, or where the ladybugs and stuff like that. You want to have a plan that you're just managing the damage down, because you don't have like a horde of ladybugs waiting to take out all the aphids. The ladybugs usually come after there's the infestation and they can start feeding and they multiply. So I always just want people to understand that when you have diseases and you have pests, you didn't do anything wrong. They just show up.
Yeah.
We have a question by Serena. She goes, what are the best companion plants for potatoes and how close do they have to be for effective pest control?
So I have not found an effective companion for potatoes. I get the Colorado potato beetle, if I got the name right, regularly. I use spinosad for them to take care of them. I remove them. I wish there was a great companion plant. I have garlic growing in my potato patch. It didn't keep them away. So the answer is I don't know. I like companion planting as a way to reduce, like we were saying, the damage down, but I've not discovered a plant that completely repels. You know, people say plant mint in containers around there. It'll keep insects away. Well, sometimes you go to your mint plant and they will be covered in insects, aphids and other stuff. Like they're going to come and they're going to eat what they want. But a good combination of plants that really mask the sense of your plants can help a whole lot. But as for repelling, I have not found anything yet. And I have tons of garlic. Like I plant garlic through my tomatoes and stuff like that just to grow it for the idea that it helps keep some stuff away.
FYI, guys, when using this around, if you are going for a beautiful garden, if you're using this around, you're not going to have a beautiful garden. Everything is going to be covered in that white clay, just to let you know. So don't spray it on your flowers and stuff like that. Just spray it on your vegetables, because if not, everything's going to be super dull. It's not going to be as beautiful as you want it to be.
What I usually tell people too is kind of try and figure out the life cycle so that if you're dusting for an insect on flowers, you're not putting the surround down May, June, July, August, and September. Try and take notes and figure out the life cycle of the insect, because then you can use it in a targeted way, and then you can stop using it, and it becomes less work for the gardener to not have to, cover everything. And all the insects that come through my garden, like I understand and know their life cycle. I won't start spraying for early blight until probably end of June, middle of July on my tomatoes. And that's when I start the hydrogen peroxide.
See, one of the things I learned from Gary a long time ago, because he was going over powdery mildew with zucchini. And he said, well, write stuff down when you have powdery mildew.
Yep.
So every single year, when you're going to get it. Now, you got to start preparing 2 weeks beforehand to get, prepare for it. You can start spraying and stuff because it's going to come.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know what date it is. You see what the temperatures. You're putting everything together because you're a little scientist out there, so you know when to prep your plants.
And it's the thing with the pests and disease. When you first open, you get a piece of land. In theory, there's no pest and disease there. They are. So you build your garden, you start growing, and then they start rolling in. And again, sometimes gardeners feel like they're doing something wrong. What am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. The diseases can float in on the air. They're overwintering and they're on host plants. The insects are just hanging out on other weeds and stuff. And then when you put your garden together, they come rolling in. So, Joe, what you were saying is perfect. 2 weeks before the problem starts, and you'll greatly reduce that damage that comes to your garden.
So Jay Dixon said, surround forms a berry that protects many pests when sprayed on fruits or vegetables. The white berry not only repels pests, it causes irritation, confusion, and an obstacle for feeding. So that's what surround does.
I'm sold.
Kathleen Moran had a question, and yes, you do. That's with any organic sprays, though. Unfortunately, as soon as it rains, you have to reapply. I mean, unfortunately, that's just the way it works.
So there's 54 people on here, guys. I just want to say thank you all for coming. And if you're on Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, welcome in. Come to YouTube so we can see your questions. But it's good to have you here. So Juby has a question. How do you decide how much fruit to remove? I have a 2-foot tall dwarf bonsai peach tree covered in fruits, hundreds. There's no way it could support all that. How much do I have to take off?
So that is a great question. So I don't know how old your tree is. So I put in a 3-year-old tree, had a lot of fruit on it. I knew that I was supposed to remove the fruit. I didn't remove the fruit. It put all its energy into the fruit. I ate some good fruit. The tree died because it didn't have the root strength to kind of take care of itself. So when you're putting in new fruit trees, you really do want to reduce the fruit. I also have a nectarine tree and I have a peach tree that probably did the same thing as hers. Left the fruit on too long and it snapped the branches off of it.
Oh.
So, and sad, of course, still had hundreds of peaches. I had to go and remove, I mean, I don't really know how to say how many, but at least every other peach I was removing and just dropping to the ground because there were so many. And it's a little bit of a function on how thick the stem is and stuff like that. But you do have to greatly reduce the amount of fruit because it will get too heavy and break branches. And it's possible if it's a young tree that so much energy goes into the fruit that it doesn't really do well over the winter.
Yeah, I'm new to the whole fruit thing as well. I have pear trees, apple trees, plum trees, but I am no expert on any of that. But someone told me that if you have, like, my pears, they grow like 3 in a branch like this. If you have 3 on a branch, you want to remove 1. Just so it doesn't, I don't know, so it produces more. So the pears get bigger. So last year I did that. I removed a lot of my pears like that were hanging in a row like that. I was like, well, that kind of stinks. I'm going to get less pears, but I did end up getting bigger pears, like they looked like store-bought pears. So
it's hard to do. It's like when you have to thin out your tomato seedlings from your seed tray.
Oh no, you don't want to do it. Yeah. It's like, no, I don't want to kill it. No.
It also helps too. Nectarines and in the peaches, at least in Maryland, I think it's just called actually brown fungus, but there's a fungus that attacks them. So really opening up the canopy and cutting out branches and taking fruit at least every other, if not, more, makes a big difference.
So hopefully that kind of helped you out, Jujubee, for your peaches too, because you got to thin them out a little bit.
So Kaylin, you said, my deck faces north and it's shaded. What can I do to improve my herbs and greens that I can grow? So I guess you got to find out the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, how much time you have with the sun, period, to see what, that's the biggest thing, right, Gare?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a hard question. It's like, what's the difference between partial sun and partial shade? And the answer is nothing. They're the same exact thing. So we hear so much information that, some plants do fine with 4 hours or 6 hours. And it's really hard to grow anything if you have a truly north-facing shaded area. Aside, like coleus and ferns, some of the greens before trees come in, before the leaves come in on trees and block it. You can do lettuces, maybe radishes, but it's really hard to really fix lack of sun. So maybe like you're saying, if we know how many hours you're getting, we can help you a little bit better. Even fertilizing more or giving them more doesn't necessarily help because they really need that sun, to do what they got to do.
I want to let you know you were one of the first people I ever watched when it came to organic sprays and stuff to put on your garden. I wanted to say pesticides, but that's not right either. Yeah. But you're one of the first people. Now, with your neem, I want to go back to neem oil a little bit. Sure. You put a little bit of Dawn dish soap in your neem oil, don't you?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, I don't think, know that. How when you're mixing it up, tell people how you do that and why you add the Dawn dish soap.
Sure. So I'm actually going to be doing a future video and I'm putting every DIY spray on it with a timestamp so people can find it. So anytime that you put an oil into water, oil's going to float. So if you're doing like a just soap and maybe olive oil to kind of take care of aphids, or you're doing it with neem oil, if you don't add soap, and you shake it, the oil's going to float to the top. So you're just spraying water. And then when it gets to the oil, you're going to spray a thick coat of oil onto your leaves, and you're going to damage the leaves. So you have to put soap into it to help the oil disperse through the water, so that when you shake it, it's going to stay dispersed through there for at least several minutes, so that you can do the spray, and then you shake it again and spray. So without the soap, you're not putting anything really on your plants except water and then oil. You can use any soap, like the Castile types are the purest and cleanest. Dawn can be okay. You can use detergents if that's all you have, but I would use 1 or 2 tablespoons of the Castile type in a gallon of water with 1 or 2 tablespoons of neem oil. But I wouldn't use Dawn concentrate at 1 or 2 tablespoons. You're going to put too much soap in there, and you're going to damage the plants. Now, what's hard is for us to know what your soap is. So the best way to do it is to put some in, start with a teaspoon, put your neem oil in, shake it up, take the lid off and watch it, and you'll see the neem come to the surface. If it stays dispersed for a couple of minutes, then you found the right amount of soap, and stop there. Plant leaves can be sensitive to too much being put on them. So 1 or 2 tablespoons of neem is fine. 1 or 2 teaspoons of Dawn is okay. But if you're putting in too much soap, you can actually damage the leaves. So that was a long-winded way to say, test spray a couple of leaves whenever you make anything, wait 24, 48 hours. If it does no damage, spray away.
Now, can you talk us through the process of planning and setting up your garden every year?
I don't. So
or does everything go in the same spot every year?
It's a lot. So my garden is designed to teach, and I like the mental health aspect of just having beautiful plants everywhere. Yeah. I like walking through with the coffee. So the first thing, my coffee and just listening to the birds and stuff. So the first thing I say to people is, what do you want the garden for? If you want it for food production and you're feeding a lot of people, long straight rows is the best way to go. If you want something fancy and you want it to be like, I call my garden, I have different garden rooms in there. Then you can set it up with different raised beds and different sections and stuff. So it starts with, what do you love? What kind of look do you want to it? But then after that, no matter what you're growing in, I've got definitely the cool weather crops first. Start a lot of them in January and February. Start the warm weather crops usually beginning of April. And I kind of just rotate in slowly like that. But it's always a question of, what do you love to eat? What do you like, look wise? And then the other thing I would say is, don't plant 12 kale plants if you're not going to eat 12 kale plants worth of kale every week, or you're just going to end up getting tons of insects and disease and stuff like that. So probably the biggest tip I have for planting is, grow what you're able to eat or give away consistently, or you're going to get disease and pest problems.
Now, cucumbers are one of my favorite vegetables. Mm-hmm. And in fact, if I could just have an entire garden full of cucumbers, I would be a happy person. What is your suggestion for just getting healthier cucumbers? Usually my cucumbers start getting crispy. They start dying off. They look horrible. I mean, they're still producing, but towards like July, they're just like complete crap. So what is your suggestion?
Is don't be attached to a dying plant. Yank it out. So get rid of it.
You can see how they're going, no!
Just toss it. Because, so using Maryland, in May, I'll put in cucumber plants. If you can direct seed, you also want to get healthy transplants, number one. If you go into Home Depot or Lowe's, I really recommend not spending $5 on your plants there. It's a ripoff. It's too expensive. I understand convenience. I understand maybe you see this cool variety of pepper you can't grow. So go ahead and get it. But cucumbers are best grown from seed, just put into the ground. When it's warm, they take off. By growing a seed in the ground, it develops these beautiful root systems first that support the upper canopy growth. And then you could have a healthier and stronger plant. When you're growing, like this is Thai basil, if you do a cucumber in a little cell like this, you're going to have these tiny roots with this big cucumber leaf. You're going to put it into the ground, and it's not going to be able to support the growth. So if you're doing your own transplants, You want a large container for a nice root system. That's going to make all the difference.
Why
Then
does that give me so much anxiety? I don't know why, but direct sowing my cucumber plants give me anxiety, because what if something eats them? What if
They
I
might.
have all these what ifs and then I don't have cucumbers?
Well, or you can use bigger containers like this,
Okay.
So that will solve the problem. But you can, I mean, the seeds are so inexpensive. They germinate really quickly. So it doesn't sound like you have a problem with them germinating, but you're worried something's going to happen. So if something comes to eat them, I recommend getting dish basket. What are they called? Like, yeah, I guess dish baskets or whatever for what we used to put our dishes in. There's a name, I can't remember it. But go to the thrift stores and you can buy these little cages that are really kitchen racks. Put it over the cucumbers. That will stop the birds and stuff from coming.
Okay.
Iron phosphate is a baited organic method for slugs and snails. Scatter that around. Don't clump it, but just scatter it around. That will do it. And then overplant. You're going to have to remove some of your cucumbers, but plant extra.
Okay.
But the best thing is if you plant them in May, either transplants or seeds, plant another round somewhere 4 or 6 weeks later, or start transplants, because the crispy sun, or the sun will come and crisp them. The beetles will come and eat them.
Yeah.
And you're going to be trying to save them next to them, have new plants coming. The insects tend to leave the new plants alone. I don't know why, but they're going to be growing and developing as that sun is out, damaging your cucumber plants. The other thing to do is try shade cloth when the hot sun is coming. 50% shade cloth will make a big difference, because the sun stops our tomatoes, our peppers, and our cucumbers from growing. They think they're in drought, so they just go to survival mode.
Okay. I'll definitely take that to heart and do that this year. I just want to have enough so I can eat a ton of them, but not only that, but make a ton of pickles. And
Yeah.
so
I make pickles. Tomato cucumber salad's like my favorite.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a lot of people get
quite the blend.
And a lot of people get frustrated with the July sun, and their squash is dead, their zucchini's dead, their cucumbers are dead. You could take a break and put the seeds back in end of July, and you're going to have a great crop August and September. They will grow into the last frost. So we can keep planting and keep going rather than think, because I don't know, we're just sometimes have that mentality. Okay, we put everything into May, go.
Yeah.
And then it stops going, and then we stop planting again.
Yeah, I've done that before, and I had a disappointment because they just didn't work out. So I'll have to try it again going in towards the fall and see if I get like a bumper crop of cucumbers.
I think you will. And squash itself, like a zucchini, from seed to producing, it can happen in 40 days because it's so warm. That's going to germinate right away. So you really have lots of windows. Like when the squash bugs or the vine borers come in, that cycle, the vine borer will go away. You can put in your new squash and zucchini plants, and they're going to go through August and into September, even October now here in Maryland, and you will get more of those plants or more of those crops.
What is a common garden issue that you had, and you had tons of problems with in the beginning, that you solved the issue?
I always like to talk about radishes. For years, I grew great radish leaves and couldn't get the bulb to happen. And every time I say this, there's always somebody who says, you can fertilize radishes and you won't have a problem. If I found that I just put my radish seeds in the ground, first thing they go in, April, March, May, whatever, no fertilizer, maybe some compost, but no extra feeding on the radishes. And I get beautiful radishes now every year for like the last really 7 years.
They're so good.
And I was I was over fertilizing them, the timing of using fertilizers makes a big difference. And we're kind of geared to feed, keep giving fertilizer. And we really don't have to do that much.
Jersey Twister says, how much do you sell your tomato and pepper starts for? first time starting seeds, and I got a little carried away.
So I think, yeah, I get carried away every year still. And I say to myself, don't get carried away. And I have too many. So the best thing to do is, every place in the US, every county, whatever, has its rules. But you can do a plant yard sale. Just put signs out. And I think you can easily sell stuff, depending on the size, from $2 to $4 a plant. $3 seems to be that sweet spot. Here in Maryland, I can find plants for $1.50 all the way up to $6. So $2 to $3 for a healthy plant. I don't think people mind paying that at all.
Now, I know you just talked about over fertilizing your radishes. We are having a radish competition. What do you suggest that people do to get the biggest radish they can possibly get without it splitting?
Control the water. So that's the other thing. So I would, compost is well below a 111 NP and K. So that is great to work into the soil. You're not going to ever have a problem with compost. The radish is going to split when the soil dries and then you water heavily, and then the soil dries and you water heavily. So if you can keep that ground really moist consistently, it won't split. Or if it does dry out, just give it a little bit of water, let it do its thing, then give it a little bit more water. But it's that dousing of water that splits the radish.
Okay. So don't water it. Don't water it every day, or just twice a week?
I think it's more, it's hard to say because people's soil are different, but you want to kind of let it just stay damp. So it could be every day and just a quick water. It's if you do it every 3-4 days, but you give a bunch of water, it's going to split it. So what you're trying to do is just give it enough to kind of keep chugging along without, the big.
Is that the same, kind of with most root vegetables? You probably don't want to overwater your carrots either, right?
I've seen it mostly with radishes splitting, and I've seen it with tomatoes splitting. Like when you get a lot of splitting on your tomatoes, it's usually because we give it so much water, it pulls it into the system so fast, and the tomato expands and the skin cracks, or you get a really heavy rain. You can't really control that. But I haven't noticed it too much with other crops. Just the radish, because radishes are it's the speed in which they kind of grow and expand, and radishes are pretty fast.
Right. Well, there you guys go. Got a little tip for our growing competition with your watermelon radishes. So take it to heart, because that's Gary that's talking about that.
Although I've planted my row of watermelon radishes and only 4 have come up. So I'm struggling with those.
And just to let you guys know, you only have to the end of the month to enter those competitions. So just make sure you go to the playlist. That's where you can find it on Grow Big TV, and stay all in. Even if you don't make that first video, go to that registration, say all in, so we get a little more organized. So, yeah, Gary, we have 6 competition. Each winner of each contest get $100, and
nice.
Second and third place gets seeds, which is pretty cool for, hey, just let me throw a seed down and see what happens. You never know. Last year we had a Peter Pepper challenge, and a 12-year-old girl won a contest.
That's
on
nice.
a Peter Pepper, and it was like, oh.
It's really cool though to see people get excited about growing these vegetables. And there, with our competitions, like we have the zucchini, and the zucchini has to be perfect. It can't be any cracks. There can't be any weird yellow spots. Yeah. So
who judges? You, both of you?
It's by weight or width. They have to make 3 videos before the season with the seed packet. Somewhere's in the middle and somewhere's at the end.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
Growing. Since we're talking about those plants, let's go back to your seed company. How many seeds do you sell there? Tell everybody a little more about the seeds that you have at your company.
So, I mean, I can't say that they're stamped organic, but I'm not buying chemical, stuff like that. People always ask that. And I do like to say, organic gardening is beautiful. And it's really about using the resources on your property, your own compost, knowing what you spray on there. You do it self sprays and stuff like that. In my opinion, it's not necessarily going for the stamps. And then I'll get back to the seed shop. Seeds have been organic forever. It was when somebody stamps on them non-GMO. Like you'll never, well, I can't say that now, but you'll never get a GMO seed in a seed packet. However, there is a GMO tomato that is out there now. So there's a lot of stamps and stuff on seed packets that really don't mean a whole lot. So I do have organic seeds and I have other seeds, but they're not all 100% organic. And I'm just going for the basic, you know, good mix of heirlooms, peppers, summer crops, cool weather crops, and stuff like that. You know, enough of what would give a person a basic, you know, garden. You know, I think my passion started with heirloom peppers and heirloom tomatoes. So that's what the seed shop leans more towards. And then, you know, the other stuff for people to kind of, you know, pick what they need.
I am so hungry for fresh vegetables right now. I can't help it.
Yeah. Do you know what the rule is? And I worked with a company who had organic seeds. You know what the rule is to define whether or not a seed is organic? Everybody's looking for the stamp, but yeah,
I have no idea.
So you have to grow it on earth that doesn't have a chemical fertilizer for 3 years. So it could have been a field that was covered in Roundup for 20 years, but 3 years later you can grow on it. You can't put chemical sprays on it, and you can't have treated seeds. You know, when it goes through the machine, you have to use organic. You couldn't use Windex or something like that. You have to use an organic cleaner. So there's not a whole lot to it that makes that seed organic. And it's kind of one of my things, because I want people to really understand where they're spending their money and what they're buying. You know, the other soapbox for me is when you go to buy organic granular fertilizers and you see tomato tone and you see pepper fertilizer and you see lettuce fertilizer and you see berry fertilizer and you see all these fertilizers, and people are buying a bag for each vegetable, and you don't need to do that. Just pick one that has NP and K. You know, the ingredients are the same: chicken manure, blood meal, bone meal, you know, feather meal, all that kind of stuff. So,
and Rick is right. Organic seeds are more expensive and you get less seeds in a pack.
Yeah. So basically it's just their way of ripping you off.
Exactly. You know, and I, you know, solely, you know, this is kind of my thing, but if you take a little basil seed, you know how small a basil seed is, right?
Yeah.
What could possibly be on that seed that's not organic, that's going to create a basil plant that is toxic in some way? Nothing, you know. I just want people to be aware of that. I mean, the best thing you can do for organic gardening is compost. Don't treat your lawn, use your lawn clippings and just compost. That is just beautiful stuff. You know, build relationships with farms near you, get their manures and stuff like that. Know what's in the ground, or know what, you know, they're growing there. It really comes down to meat to compost. That's organic.
Speaking of organic, let's go to the complete opposite. How do you feel about GMOs?
So I feel both ways. How's that? So growing corn, a GMO corn plant, so that you can douse the ground with an herbicide, I don't agree with that. You know, saving the papaya industry because of a disease and creating a genetically modified papaya, I would agree with that. I guess it's more about the purpose. I know there's the purple tomato. I don't know if you guys heard of it, but the purple tomato is out. And I just did a seed swap to get some. I want to grow it. I want to see what it's about. But they took this, I think it was a snapdragon pigment, and they mixed it into the tomato. I don't know if that's good or bad. You know, I know that it's not going to populate and poison the world. I'm not sure why we need it. So, but I want to educate myself on it. So I want to grow it. I want to see it. I want to understand what it is, and then I'll decide more. If the purpose is to rescue a failing industry, I'm great with it. You know, I have cornfields near me, and I can tell when it's spray time because I can smell, you know, the Roundup stuff floating in the air. And, you know, we're on well water. that's not a good reason for me.
Yeah, I'm on well water too. And I
Yeah.
have 100+ acres down the street from me where they spray.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah. And I mean, I've read everything. I don't believe that it degrades in the sun. Something gets into the water, you know. But anyway.
See, this is my, I like to talk about the purple tomato.
Okay.
You're bringing, I don't mind to do it hydroponically.
Right.
Away from everything in its own thing. It's made to fight cancer and all that kind of stuff. I see it a little bit of a purpose about that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, there's other tomatoes, like you just said, that are purple tomatoes, maybe not inside, outside,
right.
yes, that has the same exact purpose. Now, when you're having that GMO tomato, which is disease resistant in the beginning, it's good for 1 year, but those pests that come into that plant, they're going to find their way sooner or later. They just do. And that's going to affect your whole garden. Because that one pest or whatever pest that comes to that tomato, it just becomes more abundant in your garden and they're harder to fight. So why would you want to have more insects like that come into your garden to eat everything else? You know, because that's what bugs do. That's what insects do. They're going to find their way no matter what. The first year sounds great. Second year, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I would definitely grow it somewhere differently if you do.
Right. Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I'm intrigued by it. Want to learn more about what it is. You know, and I would agree with you. Like, they might say loaded with what is it? Anthocyanin is the purple pigment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But how much do you really need? Because I can eat the midnight snack, an All America Selections winner that is a dark purple skin. Like, how much of that chemical do you really need? So, you know, I'm always cautious and enjoy just kind of reading and learning about stuff, you know. But I don't know, open a door to a whole garden of GMO. Because when I was saying you'll never find a GMO seed in a seed pack, I used to be able to say that. Now I can't. I have to do a disclaimer of one that you could possibly find GMOs now.
Yeah.
I also don't like the term GMO, because genetically modified organism, you and I can do with cross-pollinating. We are genetically modifying it. Bees and pollinators do that. I think they should be called GEOs, genetically engineered organisms, because they're engineered by humans that they can't otherwise be grown, you know, or occur in nature and stuff like that. And then just to finish up our soapboxes, I would love to see, when you're buying a product and you're buying corn that's genetically modified, I want it to say G corn, like G corn, or G whatever, so that we know what we're eating. The food industry really hides where our food comes from, what it is. And I think it's ridiculous. You know, if you're going to be bold enough to use genetically modified food, maybe you want it, maybe you don't, but at least let me know that it's there. And you can do that by just putting a G in front of the word corn if it's genetically modified.
See, Gary, I'm a big believer with your gut biome and all that stuff. So if you have a healthy soil, which equals a healthy plant, which makes a healthier you and a healthier earth, right? That's kind of it. All starts with the gut, the soil. You know, nobody puts the soil as importance with gut biome, which causes all your problems going on to society today. Everything starts with your gut, you know? So that's just my little thing. So when you're doing things hydroponically, it doesn't do anything for your gut biome.
No. I mean, you can add chemicals into the water, but it's not the same as growing it in the dirt, that you need that nutrition from the dirt.
So, I mean, I probably cover all aspects, but I would sum up what we're all saying is processed food strips whatever's coming from the earth, whatever's coming from the gut, compounds in the food that we normally probably want, so that when you're eating a fresh vegetable grown in the earth, you're getting above and beyond compound-wise, chemical compounds that you don't get from processed food. And that's what we need. If you think about before food was processed or thousands of years ago, you're eating leafy plants, you're eating fruit, you're eating all that stuff that has these compounds that we've kind of stripped away in our food system, that we're just eating starch, or meat. I love meat, so I'm not against meat, but meat. But you have to have all those leafy greens. Like you have to be eating endive and lovage and, not just iceberg lettuce or romaine lettuce, peas, carrots, the tops from the carrots, the tops from the turnips, all these things that make a difference in your stomach, in your intestines, in your body. And that's what people don't understand. It's not that a Dorito is necessarily bad for you. It just doesn't add anything except calories and taste.
Yeah, it's
Where
empty.
are all the good compounds? Yeah, it's empty.
That's the same with most fast foods
Mm-hmm.
and all of that too. It's just empty, and you're just eating a bunch of emptiness. And then after you're done eating that double cheeseburger, you're still hungry later. You're like, man, it's because you didn't have anything that's worth anything.
Yeah, I was like, and I will, occasionally eat fast food. And I thought about it today, but I was out in the garden and I'm like, the collards look good. The endive is up. The romaine overwintered. The daikon radishes are good. So I made this huge salad and it was delicious and it kept me full, really from most of the day. But I like balance is so important. And fresh vegetables, I think, are so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I just told my husband yesterday, actually, I said, I want to try and eat 2 vegetarian meals a week.
Yep.
And not full blown vegetarian because I still love hamburger. But I want to try and eat 2 vegetarian meals. Heck, I'd fry up that hamburger and put it on my salad too. Yeah. But I want to try and eat more vegetables. So
it's really the addition of the vegetables. The other thing that drives me crazy, you've seen the commercials with the 2 vitamins, fruit and vegetables, and the people are just popping these pills, these vitamins. And I'm thinking to myself, why not just eat the vegetables and the fruit? You're never going to get something out of dried vegetable being in a pill form or dried fruit being in a pill form.
Yeah.
That it's not going to hurt you, but that actual harvesting and going out in the garden is good for your health mentally. And then actually eating it is so much better for you. I'm going to stand up and shut my window because my dogs are barking.
Okay. So what kind of dogs do you have?
So I have a Bernedoodle is my dog. Yeah, she's brilliant. And then my daughter's golden retriever is over.
Oh, awesome.
So great dogs.
Awesome.
So Serena usually tells us a joke at the end of the live, but she came up with one right here. What do you call a garden that is full of iron? The rusted garden.
If you walk the property now, all the blades and rakes and stuff, everything that is iron, I actually have displayed just laying around. So there's truth to that.
If you had a vegetable that you could say you were a master in, a complete master, not just a master gardener, like a master, like
right,
you're the man. You're the vegetable. What would it be?
I mean, I don't know. That's kind of tough. Tomatoes, peppers, probably. I mean, but it's not just me. Like peppers in Maryland are really disease and pest free for the most part, except, maybe a light spray. But I can grow peppers that are just incredible. They're absolutely delicious. Cucumbers, from what we talked about before, using that technique, maybe not just a single cucumber plant, but for a harvest over a season, I have cucumbers down really well. And they are one of my favorite things to eat. Nothing beats a cucumber. Like a cucumber, when you break it off the vine and you see the water seeping out from where you detach it, and then you peel it and the peel is actually dripping like, water and stuff. You can't find that anywhere.
No, you can't even find that in the grocery store.
No, it's all dry and stuff like that. And even if you go to farmer's market, it's still picked and it's several days later. But nothing beats popping stuff right out of the garden.
Oh, it's so good.
So let's talk about zucchini.
Yep.
Problems with zucchini, from pest to disease. 'Cause, you got that vine borer problem, you got the powdery mildew.
Vine
You
borer.
got, you get like you get these 2-3 weeks where it's so abundant. Then all of a sudden, it just died.
It will. I mean, that's part of the thing is when it starts producing, start seeds in a cup somewhere or put them in the ground somewhere, because you're going to beat the life cycle of the vine borer. I mean, it's only out for, I can't remember without looking it up, but let's just say July 1 to like August 7th or something. So you can plant through that. The other thing I recommend is I used to plant like 8 zucchini plants. Like, who's going to eat all that,
Oh, I could barely eat the stuff that I got from one last year.
Yeah. So concentrate on like 2 plants spaced out where you can go in and inspect and remove squash bugs and check for the eggs under the leaves. You can even look in the stem, because I've dug out vine borers before. Like, your zucchini and squash plant are pretty resilient that you can actually dig into the stem and remove a squash bug if you see the boring going in. Or where it's damaged, just put a huge mound of dirt over it and it will root out again. But that goes along to saying that when a plant is beat up and dying, just kind of replace it. And you can't stop them. Like, I wish we could go back to that question. What do you plant with potatoes that keep insects away? I've put basil, I've put garlic, I've put onions around my zucchini, and they still show up,
So the urban gardener says the first thing he ever grew was a cucumber. The first one you grew, you said, was it the cucumber too? No, it was a pepper. What was the first vegetable that you grew on your own?
First one I ever grew on my own were the tomatoes, followed by the cucumbers. So it was tomato and cucumbers. And that's probably why I like tomato, cucumber, and onion salad. Like, I look forward every year to just making huge bowls of that.
I think tomatoes are like the gateway drug. Like, everybody starts with tomatoes and they're like, I wonder what else I can grow. And then before you know it, you have a huge garden and you're like, this all started with a couple tomato plants.
Well, it starts with like 1 4x8 box, and the next year you have 2, and then the next year you've got 4, and then you've got them tucked everywhere. And then, it's a good habit. But I mean, like, I have a large garden that I have to give a lot of stuff away because I'm growing it to teach and stuff like that. But you don't need a ton of space. Like, if you just kind of coordinate a plan, 2 or 3 tomato plants, a couple pepper plants, you can get so much out of there. Like, a lot of people are like, well, I'm going to go off grid, I'm going to, great, if you want to do that. But you can strike a nice balance, grow and get a lot of food, still use a grocery store, still use our food chain, but really become more self-sufficient by bringing in more stuff that you've grown on your property. You don't have to go like a light switch on or off, either grocery stores or 100% in the garden.
So let's talk about varieties. You talked about, you said peppers and tomatoes, but we haven't talked about varieties. What is your favorite tomato varieties, and what's your favorite hot and sweet peppers?
So I've grown a lot. So the peppers I'm growing this year and are poblanos, jalapenos, favorite, shishitos, green bell, banana peppers, and then facing heaven peppers for dried pepper flakes. Those are the 6 that I tend to like the most, eat the most. I was growing all kinds of different things before, but I just wouldn't eat them. So this year I'm really concentrating on those 6. Then I like growing the hot peppers, though I don't eat them. I'm doing an Armageddon, ghost pepper, scorpion pepper, Caribbean red, and an orange habanero. You know, but just one of each of those plants. I'll do multiples of the other ones. Tomatoes, black cherry is one of my favorite tomatoes. Highly recommend it. Juliet for
grape,
for the grape type, and then maybe a sweet 100. Like I have a cattle panel arch tunnel, and I grow cherries on both sides. Well, one side's been taken over by blackberries now, but I grow them up there so that you can start on the one end, walk through with a bowl, and you come out with this mixed bowl of cherry tomatoes. And then just for the red tomatoes, Homestead, Marglobes, I like. German Johnson, thank you, are good. And then there's another one that I can't recall, but I've shrunk it down. I used to grow 40 varieties. It was too much. Love the black trim, but they don't do well with our heat.
Yeah.
So they're kind of tough here. Like the Cherokee purple, but not always so prolific here, and they crack a lot. So, you know, I kind of mix it up.
We're not doing Cherokee purple this year. That's my husband's favorite, but every year, like when we first got Cherokee purple, they had like no cores in them whatsoever.
Right.
And the seeds that we've gotten in the past, they have when we grow them, they have hard cores in the center. And my husband just thinks that maybe the seeds got mixed up over, you know, at the plant or whatever they were doing, because he's like, that doesn't seem like a true Cherokee purple to have that hard core in the center like that.
They're not. So, you know, certain seed companies grow all their stuff, but there's only a handful of places growing a lot of these seeds, and then they just get distributed to the different distributors. So that could very well be, you know, a batch. Like I know chives are supposed to be like the easiest thing to grow. For like the last 3 or 4 years, people have been telling me how their chives seeds aren't germinating. Mine weren't germinating. People were literally saying we're having issue growing, and now it's back. The chives are growing.
That's funny that you said something about that, because I had issues too. Finally, somebody just gave me a start from theirs, and now I got chives everywhere. But I had issues too. I had like 3 or 4 packets that I went through, and I never got one single thing to come up.
That was, and that was probably the time span that lots of people were noticing that. I also grew the standard Black Beauty eggplant and was getting the round 8-ball ones, you know, and I know that I had the seed packs. So stuff does get screwed up.
Yeah.
Reminds me of Peppergate.
Yeah.
Last year, Peppergate, everybody had the wrong seeds, and it's kind of crazy.
I'm doing a market garden this year, so I have like a ton of just regular old tomatoes, Big Boy and Lemon Boy and all of those. And so I'm hoping I get a ton of tomatoes this year. So,
you know, I like what you said about the black cherry. Black cherry is it's such a healthy plant. Black cherry is one of my favorite tomatoes, and it's sun gold. So you get the yellow, you know, that color and a black color, and the sweet million you talked about. What a great tomato. That's one of my favorite cherry tomatoes.
A really good tomato is Matt's Wild Cherry.
Matt's Wild Cherry, yeah.
Matt's Wild Cherry. And it's super prolific. It's a tinier cherry, really sweet. And it's actually one of the plants that are used for a lot of the hybrids to breed different types of cherry tomatoes. And it grows all the time out of my compost pile, which I think is a Matt's Wild Cherry. We call it the Rusted Garden compost tomato now, and I've like given seeds to different people. But it's absolutely delicious. And what was I going to say? One of the cool things with the Matt's Wild Cherry is, you know, we do all this stuff with the seed starts, and we grow stuff, and we try to get stuff in the ground. They just germinate on their own sometime in the middle of June, you know, when I've already rushed stuff out there. But by the end of the season, they're the ones that are still up and going and kicking and producing while everything else has kind of died out. I mean, and there's something said just letting nature let a seed go.
Jersey Twister. I'll let Gary answer because my pepper starts are starting to flower. Should I trim the flowers off or leave them on?
I would remove them because a couple of things. Like, so now I recommend, I used to try and grow tomato transplants like 8 to 12 weeks indoors, peppers 12 weeks indoors, but they would begin to flower. That's usually means you started your starts too early because you want them to get really nice root systems, have some green canopy growth, get into the ground, establish, and then the flowers come. So what your plant's going to start doing, and I've left pepper plants like I didn't get to in like a flat like this. This is Thai basil. And a banana pepper would get this big, and I would have banana peppers growing on it. It was a little tiny bonsai plant. I kept it watered for whatever reason, just to see what it would do. So you want to remove the flowers. You want your transplant to be going in as leaves and roots, not growing peppers. Once it takes off and it's warm, you'll get plenty of flowers. You'll get plenty of peppers. You know, that's one of the biggest mistakes people make with cucumber plants. Like if you're going to grow a cucumber seed start or squash or any of those warm weather crops, put them into like, you know, really a container like this, something big. From when you put it in or from when it germinates, only 3 or 4 weeks of growth and then get it into the ground. Don't grow it 6, 7, 8 weeks inside. You don't want it to have little baby cucumbers on there, little baby zucchinis, flowers on there. You want them just to be green and roots. And we tend to start them way too early.
Let's take a look at your YouTube page, Gary, so everybody can see it if they haven't already subscribed. You have close to 700,000 subs, which is amazing. So hope you guys could make sure you sign up here and subscribe.
I appreciate that. Yeah, my milestone is 750,000. For whatever reason, that actually wasn't a goal. Like when I first started, and this is just so people know, this is 12 or 13 years later from starting, you know. And I remember when I first started, and I'm like, well, I've got 7 subscribers. I'm getting 2 a week. And then it started just slowly building up to 10 a day, to 20 a day. And, you know, it takes 4 or 5 years, I think, to really get going and get things out there. But I hope people don't just try and start a channel to get lots of subscribers, but then get disappointed in the first couple of years. It just takes time.
Now you talked about frost protection. A lot of problems we have out there. People are, you to get 70-degree weather, 70, 70, 70, and all of a sudden, oh, it's 40 degrees. Oh no. Just like if you go out right now and they're selling tomato plants, pepper plants, it's too early for most of us. So Gary talks about frost protection here. Can you just give a little schematic about what you're talking about?
So we always get, the first thing is don't rush it out, because peppers and warm weather crops aren't going to grow in cold soil, you know, that top 6 inches. But we still kind of try and get them out, or we do the right thing and then we get this freak frost. So I like going to the thrift stores and buying glass vases. You know, if you go on their sale day around you, you can get them for like $1 or $2. And it's basically like a cloche. And if I have the cold frost coming, you can see it a little bit right there. That's what I would just put over them. And it makes a huge difference. You can put a clay pot, but it does have a hole in the top. So you want to put a container over it that doesn't have a hole. You can also, you know, certainly put blankets and stuff like that. But these work really, really well. And I have a bunch just sitting around my strawberry towers. You know, I have gotten better at not putting out plants too early.
Yeah.
But you got to cover them, you know.
That's my problem though, is I get so excited. And I think
hard.
a lot of people do. They're like, oh, I want to get this started. I want to get this started. But they don't think about all that extra stuff. Like, oh my gosh, if I plant this at May 8th, I might still have frost. So it really does require a lot of extra work to have to keep going out there. I know last year I got a frost warning at 9 o'clock at night. I said, you know what? If they die, they die. Because that the 5th or 6th time that I covered them, and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
It's right. I mean, it's hard. And you can't trust, like, maybe we were talking before, you guys went live, that if it's 39 degrees, I always subtract 9 from it because we have microclimates and stuff. I got frost the last 2 days when it was supposed to be 38 or 39 as low. That 38 or 39 low doesn't necessarily represent your garden. So, if the nights really aren't staying 45 and above, there's that risk of frost coming. And I mean, I've from experience, I've lost tons of stuff. What I would recommend, like if you're doing a market garden too, and I don't know if you're growing in rows, but if you have a strategy of, you got your row covers ready and it's easy to do, but you don't feel like getting up at 2 a.m. to cover them or something like that. I mean, it's a lot of work. So you wait.
Yep.
And I love your video.
I feel weird though. I feel like I'm behind because I'm seeing all these people and their beautiful stuff already out and everything. I'm like, no, just be patient. Just be patient.
Because if you like if you go ahead and you drop your tomatoes maybe 3 weeks early and you doing all this care and you put a seed in when the soil temperature is warm, you think you've got this great transplant that you've had in the ground for 3 or 4 weeks and it's going to get bigger and grow better. That seed, when that soil gets warm, will quickly catch up to that plant. And it's going to be even stronger because the root system is establishing faster than the upper growth. And when it has a massive root system, that greenery is going to take off. So yes, your tomato that you do early will get you a little bit of fruit soon, but not enough for the struggle, But I know how you feel because you're like, it's 3 great days. I want it out there. I want it growing and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, Gary, I liked your video with the bag soil because they're basically all the same.
They are the same. They are the same. And I decided to do a longer video, and this is the one that I decided to start doing timestamps. All that you can't, well, in that picture there, that was like $90 worth of soil. That really isn't a whole lot. And it's really a combination of wood particles, shredded hardwood, peat moss, and then some soil, depending on what you're buying. And you can make all of this for a lot cheaper, than buying it. And if you really are just getting started, go to a local landscape company, ask them what garden soil they have, check it out, see what compost they have, check it out, and just get it delivered. It's really inexpensive to get a cubic yard versus you're buying these in cubic feet, and you can save a ton of money. Soil is the most expensive thing. Like I think in this video to do a 1 foot edge 4x8, it was like $200 if you're buying the higher end soil,
Yeah, we just bought super soil. It was $45 a yard.
Yeah, perfect. And then you can add in your own compost. You can add in your organic fertilizers that you want to buy. You can add in peat moss or cocoa coir, and you can make much better stuff. Like, I don't know. I mean, I never have an issue talking about the Miracle Grow soil because they're so proud. I don't know if you've seen my video or if you know, but you see Miracle Grow and it says grow vegetables 2 times larger. And people are like, okay, let me buy that. I want vegetables that are 2 times larger. When you look at 2 times larger, there's an asterisk. And then when you go down to the corner, it says compared to vegetables grown in soil without fertilizer. That drives me nuts. So all that bag is saying is we have fertilizer in there. So you can buy the cheaper version. You can make your own, buy it like you did, add in the fertilizer, and you're going to grow vegetables 2 times bigger than a garden that doesn't have fertilizer. And that's the stuff I hate. It's kind of how they over commercialized organic, how they can say anything on this bag soil products. Like when you buy a bag of compost and manure, how much is compost and manure? Does anybody know? Nobody knows because it's not regulated. It could be a handful. It could be a whole bag. So there's a lot of, I think, I mean, it is shady to me because they are just trying to get you to spend a lot of money for stuff that isn't worth it.
Yeah,
Well, it's
I was
almost
just talking. I think I was just talking to Joe about this because we had someone analyze bag of soil or something, and I'm like anybody can do anything to this. And I know there's they analyze a bag of worm castings or something, or and there was just nothing in it. And I'm
Right.
like, how do we know? I'm like, I'm not going through every company and looking at all the ingredients. I'm like, this is nuts. I'm like, how do you shop for this stuff?
Yeah.
It's
So
crazy.
right. I mean, worm castings is good. Like you can get sifted worm castings, and I work with a company that I've known. It's great stuff. Then you can buy another product that says worm compost and castings, but it's mostly compost. There's not a lot of castings in there. And it's just not right. Like it's not hard to label a product saying 50% castings in this or whatever. But you're absolutely right. They don't test the bagged soil products. Like even if you say organic, it's usually organic because it's peat based, and peat from Canada is already declared as organic. You know, it's fine. But when you'll see, like if you ever read the bags, it'll say forestry products. You know what that is? Pallets, lumber, stuff that's just shredded and pulverized. You know, it's all a game to just, I think, you know, get your dollar.
So on our channel, we have a guy. His name is Everest Holmes, and it's going to be a segment called Under the Microscope.
Right.
So we're going to send our soil samples in. We're going to also send in anything, you know, your earthworm castings. I don't have any here, and just have them go under the microscope. Let's find out.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that nobody has, and I think it's really cool that, hey, this is what you're buying. This is on this bag. This is what you have. What
Yeah.
use doesn't have.
Yeah.
Because, you know, it's time as people start getting real what you're buying. I hate when people are wasting money.
Yeah.
And when they could just use compost with the micros and macros and everything working together in the first place. You know, I just think it's very important that we're stop spending money on everything. That's all we're doing.
And then, and then if, you know, and the bag products are convenience, and they work, you know, most of them, like the Kellogg's brand's not the best. That's just wood chips. That's why when people grow in that, they say your seedlings turn yellow and stuff. When you have too much wood in a product, or you have compost that's not broken down, or manure that's not broken down, it challenges your plants for the nitrogen, because the microbes need that nitrogen to finish the composting. So these soil products could possibly hurt your garden, but generally speaking, they work and they're a convenience. But like you're saying, I just want people to know what they're paying for, because the $45 a yard is good stuff. It's as good as anything, or if not better than what's in those bags.
So one of the things I get really sick of is people buying corn at $4 for one piece.
Oh, I've seen that. I laughed. We went to, it was like around Mother's Day or something. We went to a very expensive garden place because they have a beautiful greenhouse. And I just like to look at all the beautiful flowers and whatever. And they had one single corn stalk in a tray. And I'm thinking, what is going on here?
It's awful. It's awful. Like, I mean, I am on Instagram, and I have a lot of videos saying, you know, hey, Bonnie Plants, what the heck are you doing? You know, where their tomatoes and stuff, $5 or $6, but it'll be the same thing. It'll be like 3 corn plants, or it'll be a cup, and it'll be like 40 radish seeds in there. You don't do that. You don't grow radishes that way. It's like purposely geared to not teaching and educating the gardener. You know, if you want to sell
Yeah,
plants,
and it sets you up to fail.
Yeah.
Because things like radishes and carrots and stuff, they don't really transplant very well.
No.
So if you transplant that and you fail, you might think that you really suck at gardening. And that's really not the case, you know?
Yeah. Or people plant the radishes as a single container because they don't know they're supposed to be spread out. Like, I would love to get with a company that focuses on teaching people how to grow, and I would back them, and, and that's fine if your plants are $3 or $4, that's more, but you're creating great plants and you're whatever, but just educate the people. Stop, ripping people off.
Brian's Garden, thank you so much for that super chat. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Joe is still working on that cowbell.
Yeah. Corky wants me to dance every time there's a super chat.
More cowbell, please.
You just pull it up on your phone. You could do the cowbell.
Like a ding ding dong. It just makes me sick when people are just wasting money. I've seen radishes that were actually radishes they're buying radish starts and the radish is already coming up.
Yeah.
So I went to the guy was coming by, hey, are those for free so we could eat them?
It's just a little snack tray.
Is that a snack for us? Are you expect people to buy them?
By the way, is that Genovese basil that you have back there?
This is, back here.
Oh, I love that. It's my favorite. Oh, and it smells delicious.
This is going to go out in my garden, but this was to show people this is what your basil should look like.
So wonderful.
So it's going, and this is a 6-pack. This was actually planted on December 17th, and I just been growing it indoors. But when you go and you buy a $6 basil plant, it's usually a couple of plants. They're usually flowering. People put them into the ground. They die. And this is all grown from seed. Like even these are a little bit too big for the root system, but I've been taking care of them. But basil is best grown by seed. Put the seeds in the ground or start them in containers, get them out there. And again, like you're saying, you're setting people up to fail. They spend all this money. They buy 3 basil plants. It costs them $15. They buy a tomato plant. It's $5. Before you know it, you have like $80 in plants. And if you would just buy the seeds, you would have enough seeds for 5 or 10 years because seeds can last if you take care of them. But this is what your basil should look like. A lot of times it has the flowers on there when you're buying them at the stores, and they're kind of past their prime at that point.
So Serena has a question. Ask Gary about seed starting outdoors and indoors, pros and cons.
So it depends on your season. If you're in a place, going up north or into Canada and you have a short season, you really want to be growing indoors to get your crops to size so you get production quicker. If you're growing in Maryland, where you really have April, May, June, July, August, September, now with, climate change, October, even into November, it's almost 8 months that I can grow. You can plant a lot from seed. The benefits from seed is you don't have to spend a lot of time on the setups. When you plant from seed, the root system is what takes over first, and then you get fast growth when the soil's warmed up. The benefit from starting indoors is kind of flipped. Like if I go to put a lettuce seed out, say February 1st, and lettuce is supposed to germinate in 5 to 7 days. Well, maybe I'm not getting frost or freeze, and my lettuce seed can take a frost and a freeze. That's going to take 3, 4, 5 weeks before it germinates. By starting it indoors, on February 1st, I get 4 weeks, 5 weeks of growth, get that lettuce out in March, and then I have heads of lettuce in April. So it does speed up things that way. I think the benefit is really for the cool weather crops. When the ground is so cold, nothing's going to germinate. You start them growing inside, you get that 4-6 week jump. Tomatoes are nice to get, 6 weeks. Peppers are nice to get 8 weeks. But nowadays I'm more with zucchini, squash, cucumbers to direct sow outside. Maybe I'll do a couple in a cup, but I was like in the past just starting everything indoors, and you just don't need to do that.
Corky, did you just move the
question?
Okay,
yeah.
I missed it because I thought I clicked on it by mistake.
No, we have another question. That's why I did that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cindy Squirrel said, I'm trying to develop my own seeds as I have a very short season 2B. Any advice?
So maybe if she could write what she means by develop my own seeds, because I'm not sure what that means, but I would go with, collecting seeds or saving seeds or trying to find seeds that seem to do the best in your climate. If that's what you're talking about, that is a good way to go about it. And you can kind of collect the seeds from the strongest or best plants. The other thing I was concerned about is if you're trying to do crosses or hybrid, that's the way people develop their own seeds too. But seed collection is a good way to do it. You have to wait a long time. Like a radish, like we usually pick a radish, it's a round radish, has greenery up to here. If you let a radish grow, it's going to get 3-4 feet tall and it expands huge, loaded with flowers. There'll be hundreds, if not thousands of pods, which if you actually pick them tender, you can eat them and you can pickle them. They're really good. But you would just have to have a good amount of time for your seeds to flower, create pods, and harvest.
Okay. Hopefully that Cindy Squirrel that answered your question.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite gardening tools?
My sprayer makes spraying easy. That's probably the best. I have more sprayers than I probably need. Aside
Do you
from
label
that,
each one too?
I do.
So one use.
Yeah. Right. Well, one I'll say poison. So if it's not, doesn't necessarily have to be a poison, but it'd be anything that could be vinegar and stuff, Dawn soap that I'm using for, killing the surface weeds or something like that. I'll have a separate one for peppermint oil. Yeah, and I label them. So I have more than I need. If I'm out and there's a really good price on a sprayer, I'll buy another sprayer for no apparent reason, because you can never have too many.
Does the vinegar really work for weeds?
It will kill the surface.
Okay.
It can acidify the soil and stop them from coming, but you have to use the 30% vinegar, and it can be expensive,
Okay.
So there's certain weeds that I pull most of them out, and I forget what it is. Maybe it's thistle that does all these lateral roots, and they take over. I use weed killer on that. Like I will use the Roundup on that, because if you don't, and you just pick it, it just gets these massive root systems, and you get more and more, of the thistle coming up and stuff.
Yeah, I was just trying to look for alternative ways, because like around my house, I don't have regular mulch. I use gravel, and I get weeds in there. Even with, I have like weed fabric underneath the gravel, and it still comes up. So I'm trying to look for alternative ways other than using Roundup, but it looks like I'm probably going to have to use Roundup, and I don't want to.
Yeah, I always say I'm 95% organic, because if I need a certain tool for a certain problem, I'm going to use it. Like I'm not going to have thistle everywhere in my garden because I refuse to spot spray. And I will just do like a dot right on the thistle, and it will control it for years. And it's not soaking the ground down or something like that. Or along your fence line where like weeding is really a pain. Like I don't have time for that. But I will use the 50%. So that's where I use the vinegar the most, like where the fence is. And I'm really soaking it with Epsom salt and the 30% vinegar. And I'm really trying to acidify that soil, bring the pH down so low, nothing wants to grow there.
Okay.
Because in order to do that, that would be a ton of Roundup. I don't want to do that. Like I'd rather use it in the spot spray.
Thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. There's 77 people watching on YouTube and Facebook, and we have 9 people watching on LinkedIn, and I'm not even sure about Twitter. So thank you, everyone, for watching this tonight. Just make sure if you ask any questions, make sure it's all in caps. Okay.
I can't believe it's really been an hour and 45 minutes.
Oh, whoa. I didn't even realize that either. Final questions, guys. Final questions.
I can keep talking. This seems like it's been like 20 minutes.
Is that your seed packets in the background too?
That's a seed company. Those are Bentley seeds.
Oh, that's Bentley seeds.
Yeah. No, I have Our packets, we actually use little coin envelopes, and I do have some stuff that says the Rusted Garden on there, but I don't have any up here. I don't think.
What do you like to add on your seed packet?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
What do you like to add on your seed packet, front and back? Like
So,
I haven't bought any yet there.
Yeah, so I have like seeds that were made with Bentley that say the Rusted Garden, and it's actually a little QR code. So there's nothing on my seed pack because I find seed packs don't say a whole lot of useful information on there. So the QR code takes you to a planting video of mine, and it explains to you watering and feeding and stuff like that. And that's
pretty cool.
That's kind of like a test run that we did for this year. It's 15 different packs of seeds.
Awesome.
Otherwise, it's just actually the seeds. I recommend people check out like Farmer's Almanac or go to a place they trust and kind of learn about it. Because everything was always like 1/4 inch deep, 4 to 6 inches apart. After danger, like they never really said a whole lot.
This is cool. This is a great live character. I can't believe how fast time has gone.
I know. It only feels like 20 minutes went by.
Yeah, I'm in no rush. So what's the record for the longest stream you've done?
3 hours and 34 minutes. We're talking tomatoes. I have no idea how that even went that long.
I don't know.
Corky wasn't even here.
It's easy to just, this is what you like. It's fun.
Now, plant biodiversity. What do you like to plant in between your tomatoes? Like, for example, between each tomato plant, I like planting basil.
Right. So I have basil, I have garlic, and I do onions in between there. And I will throw in marigolds all over the place. Like I want to believe so much that the right companion plant can fix everything. I haven't found it yet, but I do believe it helps manage the issues down. I mean, insects usually, like if you break a tomato leaf or you break a cucumber leaf, you can smell the cucumber and you can smell the tomato. So a lot of masking scents does confuse insects that travel based on scent. When they smell a damaged plant, they all show up. I mean, other insects work off of color and stuff like that, and flower color. That's why I also like using the peppermint spray, because you only need like 1 or 2 teaspoons in a gallon of water with some soap to kind of mix it up. And you can repel really small insects, because if you ever get peppermint fumes in your eye, you can feel it. So imagine what it's like on a little insect. But it can also be used to mask the scents of your plants, and that confuses insects too.
Now that's good against the vine borer too, right? The vine borer don't like peppermint.
Yeah, and it's mostly whatever. And there's so many different ways to kind of manage these problems. The most important thing is just picking a routine. Whatever you feel works for you. If it's planting companion plants, get them in the ground at the right time. If it's X spray, get that spray on a regular routine. It makes a big difference.
Now, how about do you hand water everything?
I do. My garden's pretty big, but I again, like my garden is like a place to kind of walk and wander. So I find watering really relaxing, but I also use that time to kind of observe, what's going on, part for like mental health and wellness and enjoyment, but also I catch a lot of things early because I'm out there watering. If you're just using a drip system, which I understand is needed in a lot of places, you don't always see the problems rolling in. If you catch the problems early, it makes a difference. But I do hand water. I just watered everything yesterday. And I would add too, we tend to underwater our gardens. For some reason, we're afraid that we think we can drown our plants. It's really hard to drown anything that's grown in the ground. And we are usually told to water once or twice a week, or, one deep soaking and stuff, and it gets confusing. And I've done videos on watering, trying to help people out. But if you water more often than you think, your plants tend to do much better. They need water to move the fertilizers and nutrients into their system. And it keeps the soil consistent, keeps the roots cooler, and you get I think, a much bigger and better harvest. At least I can tell from when I do it in my garden, the harvests became bigger and better.
Yeah, I think the watering part freaks a lot of people out because they don't really know what to do. And I have an issue right now. I have tons of vegetables in my grow station in my basement. And I have fans running, but I also have a dehumidifier.
Right.
So I have to really watch because my soil in them can get really dry. And so I have to go down there at least every day and take a look at everything to make sure that that's not completely dried out. So it's kind of, I can understand why it would freak people out because they don't want to overwater.
Yeah. And it transfers out into the garden. That top, like most of your plants will put down deeper roots, and that's great to do a deep watering once a week to get to that. But that top 2, 4, 6, 8 inches of the soil is the most important part of the soil for your plants. You know, that's where all the shallow roots are. The sun beating down, like on a sunny day, can heat up that surface to 100, 110 degrees, dries out the roots. When the plants start getting dry roots and warm roots, they shut down. So mulching and more moisture really keeps your plants thriving and growing. I mean, it's really hard.
A ton of pine mulch in my beds.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you this. I did a little bit of research on it. Pine is okay to use, is it not?
Yeah, there's a lot of myth that pine trees are acidic, which they probably are more acidic. The pine needles are not as acidic, but they make great mulch, you know. Nature's a great neutralizer of acidity and alkalinity. So rain and stuff like that. If you are worried, sprinkling some garden lime across the top lightly will take care of it. Wood ash would take care of it. Wood ash is great with the elements that are in there, potassium and stuff. Not a lot of wood ash. That's high in alkalinity. So you could sprinkle it over there. But people shouldn't be afraid to ever use mulch. And the pine needles will break down, you know. You're going to see all the mycelium and stuff growing through there. The worms are going to love it. It's going to pull it into the soil. It's really, really good stuff.
Since you were talking about wood ash, have you used biochar? We're starting to get really big into biochar. And have you ever used it?
I have. I like making it. So I don't know if you've watched videos on how you make it, but it's pretty cool. I take wood pellets, put it into a painter's can, like the can you buy at Home Depot, put a hole in the top, stick it into my fire, and it heats up. And then all of a sudden it'll get to that temperature and it looks like a rocket engine through the hole of all the gases and stuff escaping. It's pretty cool. However, I didn't find value for me because I have a lot of compost in the garden already. So there's a lot of organic matter. So the biochar helps pull in nutrients and locks them into there. And then, you know, it releases to the plants. So my opinion, if you have sandier soil or less organic matter, the biochar is going to help with that. And it will probably naturally break down, but it's more like charcoal, to be honest with you.
Right.
So I didn't really need it. I make it, I like it, but it didn't seem to benefit the garden in any way.
Even in watering? Because usually it maintains so much more water right there.
Yeah. I mean, right. Because the pores are going to pull in the water. I didn't use it long enough for that. So maybe in a drier climate, yes, I would think that's a good idea. I use peat moss and I have a lot of organic matter from compost in there.
Okay.
You know, and it's tough because like some people say never use peat moss. It's a carbon sink and now, you know, it's not sustainable. And I understand that. And I know that Europe wrecked their bogs. If you look at what Canada does and how they manage their bogs, yes, they're harvesting it, but they manage it very differently. And then people are like, well, use cocoa coir. You know, it's sustainable and you're using a waste product. Well, that's not necessarily true either because they're taking forests down, putting in coconut trees, and then you're spending tremendous amounts of money to harvest it, wash it, clean it, lots of water, lots of carbon, and then they have to transport it over. So it's always like one of those things where it's like, what's the best? And that gets confusing to gardeners too. So pick what you want. But if you can get to composting, you don't need peat moss. You don't need cocoa coir. You can get everything, and your garden loves it. I mean, it's the best thing ever. Are you using biochar now?
Yes.
Yeah, I am too.
It just started, or did you?
I just started. This is my first year, so this
I
is.
used it last year, but I used it in my cucumber beds because I was told even if you ground it down to a powder, it will irritate your cucumber bugs, and they don't like it. So I put it on my cucumbers leaves
On the
as
leaves?
well. Yeah, I ground it up and put it on the leaves.
Yeah, I mean, I had not heard of that. Well, diatomaceous earth is good for that too.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd be curious. Like, I don't know if you guys if you're able to do like just one bed, lots of biochar, one bed, some biochar, and then other beds, no biochar, and just to see.
That's what I plan on doing this year. I'm doing a lot of experiments.
Yeah, that's the best way. Like I think that's the way that it is the best way to learn.
Let me see. What year did you have one of those years where you just got wrecked by weather?
Maryland is a good place that, except for last year, we had less rain than normal, so the heat was pretty bad. But Maryland's pretty good that I haven't really been wrecked that way. I've had years ago hail come and wreck a lot of stuff. And
yeah, that's the worst.
Yeah. And we had a tornado touchdown not too far from here, which we've never had before. But Maryland, I like Maryland because it's 4 seasons. I like the 4 seasons. But for gardening, it's a pretty good place.
Yeah. Oh man, one year I have these beautiful, like almost black irises. Okay.
Right.
And one year it hailed and they just bloomed and they stomped all over my irises. I was so upset.
So, I mean, now that you say that, I have a massive magnolia tree on the east side of my garden. And for the last 4 years, and it's these beautiful pink and white flowers. The last 4 years, as soon as they bloom, the frost comes in because the stuff is messed up and it kills off all the flowers. So not really garden wise, but I really I look forward to seeing that tree, and it gets wrecked every year by frost. This year was a little bit better. I got 5 days of blooms, and then the frost hit.
Yeah, I'm just hoping the weather stays good. Doesn't trample my flowers. I got peonies almost up, and
that's good. How big is your garden? I know you have several acres.
It's about my actual garden is about 1,000 square feet.
That's nice.
But I have like stuff bordering. I got 2 barns. One my grandfather built, and around that barn I have weird collection of plants. I got a lily of the valley. I've got hyacinth, 2 different types of hyacinth. I got all this stuff, irises, and I even put thyme. I have some creeping thyme like around my borders and stuff. So. And so,
well,
yeah.
You said this is a hobby you stuck with, and I was thinking maybe you did just get started, but you more have a lifestyle now. This is like beyond a hobby.
Well,
1,000 square feet is big.
Yes, it started off small.
Okay.
And then we just expanded, and I have tons of raised beds, and we just keep expanding, and we have bigger ideas. We just have to execute them now. And I have a food forest now. I had a small orchard to begin with. I have about 12 apple trees, and then we just added some more plum trees a couple years ago. I mean, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
That's perfect.
But yeah, it's pretty awesome, and I absolutely love my garden. I think it's so beautiful. The only thing I have problems with right now is keeping my chickens out of it. And I got one rogue turkey that thinks she can get in there. Last year, she laid eggs in my lemon balm. She just so.
Well, we have deer. So I have a fence, and I manage the deer pretty well. But the deer that come always, I don't know wherever they have the fawns, the does have their babies. There's a was it a swale? Whatever. There's a depression in the wooded area.
Yeah.
Anyway, the every year the same doe or the groups of doe come. So I was in my garden, walking into it, and then I looked down into the turnips, and the fawn is just sleeping on top of that. I mean, so close that I could reach down and almost touch her. And they did that for like 3 days, and I'm like, all right, that's pretty cool.
That's awesome. We don't get a lot of deer. I know in the past we had, and my mom has this freakishly large crabapple tree. I mean, it's the biggest crabapple tree I have ever seen, but it's also right in the pathway of her leach bed for her septic. So it's like huge. And when it drops its apples, we get like 5 or 6 deer that come out and just like tear that up.
Yeah,
like they just love it. But that's the most deer we have. Like they don't come after anything else. It's weird.
Yeah, that's lucky. No, we have a deer trail that goes through here, so we have them.
Yeah.
We get so many deer. It's unbelievable what
they
I have.
decimate your garden.
Oh my God.
That's horrible.
What a disaster last year. I had everything planted, and my son has battled through cancer, right? And one of his dreams was to get a basketball court. That was his we did the Make-A-Wish Foundation. We went to Florida, went to Disney. But his other thing he wanted was a basketball court. So we refinanced our house, and we paid all the guy up front. We'll get this done first week. Hey, I need all the money so I get the other supplies. The guy never finished the job. Kind of screwed us over big time.
Terrible.
So last summer, all I did was Uber every single day. I started my job at 6, came home 1 a.m. Every single day, just work Uber. And I did that basically for a month in the summer. At that time, I had everything planted, saying, oh, I got a couple more days. I got my fence. I have everything netted. Everything's healthy. I planted so many marigolds thinking, the deer will never know everything. Yep. They should smell basil and marigolds. Went back out there. It was fine on Friday. Went out there Saturday, gone. Terrible, basically, all of the pepper plants. I had over 3,000 pepper plants, all chopped. Again, they were just starting to flower. There was no peppers on them yet. Tomatoes, basically all gone. It was a couple more days than 1 day. And I was like, wow, they really had a feast. It was unbelievable. Some tomatoes and peppers.
Yeah.
I still don't believe that. So now
that's not a good weekend.
That's not a good weekend. That's quite the feast. But they're always back there. What's the best ways to deteriorate deer?
I have a fence. So I have a 4-foot fence, and I have wire on it because I will get groundhogs and rabbits that are a mess too. So 4-foot fence, deer can definitely jump 6 feet or whatever. And I have posts that go 6 feet. I designed the fence myself, but I had somebody build it that I could put rope in if I needed to. The best tip I have, is certainly a fence, but on the inside of your fence, if you put raised beds or something that you wouldn't want to jump over, like you don't want to jump over the fence and then land on something that could harm you, deer aren't going to jump over it either. Like they have trouble seeing anyway up close, but you have to think about it. They want to be able to jump over something and land on the ground. So inside my fence, I have lots of growing beds, and I've never had a deer jump over into my yard in 5 years. And we get dozens of them. So you want to have a little strategy to it. The only time I had a problem, and God bless my mom for helping me out. We went away. I never go away. I only go away when it's cold, when I have no plants going. But we went away for that summer, and she left the fence open, the gate open, and a deer got in. And when I came back, I'm like, yeah, Mom, great job. Thank you. Everything looks good. But a good chunk of the garden was sheared down from the deer. But they won't jump in if you put structures on the underside.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a fence around my garden and stuff like that, but just can't keep my chickens out. So that's a major problem. I put fencing. They ate half my peas this year. I was very angry. Had to replant. And so I just put chicken wire over top of all my peas so that they can't go back in there and have a feast. So
Gary, Milk and Honey Heritage Farms has a question. What kind of soil for grapes?
The cool thing about grapes is they grow just about in anything. So and a grapevine, like if you don't know, grapevines will grow at least 6 feet down, but they'll go like 9 or 12 feet. So they're mining way down into the soil. So like blueberries, their root systems are like 12, 18 inches. So that's why you want a more acidic soil for blueberries, because they're right on the surface. That's where you can change the pH. They need a lower pH to pull in the nutrients. But grapes, you don't need to worry too much about them. It's just get them planted, and they're going to send down this massive long root, and they're just going to mine everything out of there. You can't influence, 2, 3, 4, certainly not even a foot. Well, maybe we can influence maybe the top foot of our soil, but once they get past 2 feet, they're just growing out of the earth. So there's not a whole lot to worry about. I wouldn't necessarily pick a place that stays saturated all the time, like where water actually pools. But where I have one of my grapes, the water runoff does go there. It, dries pretty quickly. But aside from like a place where water just sits, you can grow grape anywhere.
And what is your favorite fertilizer to use?
Compost now. I am more and more, I say now, before you even start a garden, build yourself a compost pile. Understanding if you have the space. Get leaves into there. Leaf compost is the most amazing stuff. If I was going to pick a fertilizer, I would go with, I used to use fish emulsion a lot. I use AgroThrive now. That's organic. I'm affiliated with them, just to disclose. That's a great fertilizer.
What is it called again?
It's
AgroThrive. Okay.
It doesn't smell like fish emulsion. If I use fish emulsion, my dog will eat the soil. So
yes. I stopped using it.
Yeah.
Freaking raccoons eating my tomato plants and ate my rose bush.
Yeah, they're looking for the fish. So I use AgroThrive, but I recommend a water-soluble fertilizer. That, for people that don't know, the NP and K is immediately available to your plant. As for a granular fertilizer, I have lots of videos on it. The ingredients are the same. So what I say is any organic granular fertilizer with NP and K represented, that's under $2 a pound. Like, I hate Dr. Earth. Dr. Earth charges a ridiculous amount of money for all this fancy labeling, and it's all the same ingredients. You're always going to find usually chicken manure, feather meal, blood meal, bone meal. And anytime you hear meal, it's usually a pulverized part of an animal anyway. Sometimes alfalfa, it's not much different.
So we have a LinkedIn user. I don't know what the name is. He says, I need a fence for aromatic plants. And he goes, I heard spice bush helps.
I never even heard of spice bush.
Have you heard about spice bush? Because I haven't heard about that either.
No. So you think the person's using spice bush to create a fence around something?
Yes. For I need a fence and aromatic plants. So I think they're trying to say, I heard instead of a fence, use spice bush.
Yeah. So I'm not familiar with spice bush, but I've just not in 30 years. It's like this. If there was that one plant that repelled stuff or something that kept deer away or kept rabbits out, we would all know about it.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a secret. So my answer is that if you need a barrier, you need a fence.
Sorry, I looked up what spice bush was, and it has like these little red berries on it. I've never even heard of it before. That's cool.
Okay, so we got a question by Big Well Dog. I need my glasses again. I added seascape root crowns a couple of weeks back, and about a half popped out of dormancy. Any advice besides wait it out? Crown still firm, not soft or brittle.
So seascape is strawberry. It's strawberry, right? Because I'm growing those. So let me just think.
I wonder if he planted them too low. You know what I'm trying to say? So the crowns didn't. You can't have them too low in the ground.
Yeah. So the strawberry crown, like you have the root system comes down, and you have like the crown, which is like, let's just say the tip of your thumb. You need to have that above the ground. Sometimes they sell bare root strawberries in bags, and it's not the best way to buy them. Like you want to buy them freshly pulled, wrapped in paper, sent somewhere, because they're usually fresh and alive. I'm not sure if this person's saying some of them popped out of dormancy and look great, but other ones are still firm and not growing. If you put in strawberry crowns and you want to make sure that the tip stays above the earth, if most of them are already green and other ones have been sitting there, they're probably dead. They're all going to really pop at the same time.
Yeah, a lot of times if you buy the ones at Walmart,
yeah,
a lot of them, it's not good. Go to the
I've
north.
never had any results with that. I finally just bought some plants and put them in, and they came back again this year. But just buying the roots.
Yeah. So it's not that much more expensive to buy from a lot of fruit companies or nurseries or whatever, and they're actually pulled out of the ground, rolled up, and then they mail them to you. That's the best way to do it. The other tip too is towards the end of June, if you have nurseries that sell strawberries in pots and stuff like that, a lot of them don't get sold, and you'll see all these baby runners coming up where a single strawberry pot that's left at the nursery might have 20 or 30 strawberry plants on there, and you can just buy that for the same price, and then you can take all those, put them into soil, and they're going to root out and grow for you. It's a great way to really get strawberries to your garden. Just start looking for the plants left at the nurseries that just have all the runners coming out and buy them.
That's funny. You got everybody coming with this. Some people are saying, "What the heck is a spice bush?"
Well, I'm going to look it up when we're done. Yeah.
So somebody, the LinkedIn user just put a link in for spice bush too. So I can't get that from here. I could look it up. You know what? Since we're all here, might as well try to look it up quick, so we could all learn at the same time. Well done.
Yeah, and I'm curious too. Like, I mean, I think it goes back to the whole idea of manage down problems. So spice bush, I don't think will keep everything out, but it could be something that sometimes does. And it's really finding that balance of things to keep the problems away, you know?
Okay, here we come. Can you guys see that? Did it pop up?
Yep.
So that didn't pop up. So that's what it is. Shrub season. Nature attracting butterfly pollinators, soil moisture moderate, sun exposure medium, wildlife benefits with the butterflies, moth nectar, so it's good for food for small animals.
It's great for a pollinator garden.
Definitely.
Yeah, just be curious how it's used. You know, maybe we read it wrong, but that's why if we had a live audience, we could get clarity right away, right, with the question.
Right.
Interesting.
That's good to know. We'll have to do a little more research on that.
I have a question for you. Okay, so in my food forest, I planted ginseng and golden seal. And so far, I have not seen them pop up. Are they extremely hard plants to get started, or did they die?
So ginseng, I've not grown either of those, so I don't know. But I don't think ginseng is really easy to grow.
Okay, so it could just be.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of makes me feel better. Because I grew it and I have not seen it come back. I had the rhizomes and I just planted them and I'm like, they didn't come back this year. I'm like, what did I do?
Yeah. I mean, so like we have like globe artichokes that are like 50-50 here based on the weather. I don't know enough about that, but depending how deep they are and what your winters are like, they could easily freeze out, because I can grow. This is my ginger. This is ready to go into the garden. So this was cut up and it was bathed in hydrogen peroxide and it just stays moist in there. But I pre-sprout it. So this has a good 2 months of growth because you need I don't know, remember, 8 or 9 months, 10 months of good growth. But this is all pre-sprouted. But the ginger won't last. So when the freeze comes, that is killed off. So I wonder if ginseng is along that family.
Yeah, I had 3-year rhizomes that I had in there. So it was already almost there. And I haven't seen it.
That would be cool. Yeah, that's too bad.
I'm very upset about it.
So the LinkedIn user, clarity, I want to align my new fence with spice bush as a border to garden and conservation landscape. So that makes sense. That's perfect. I love that.
That'd be great. I mean, just for the reasons we saw, for what it does for nature and pollinators and stuff, that would be wonderful. And, putting that bush on the inside, I mean, you could put it on the outside too, but that will help the barrier because it increases the width and the deer just aren't going to want to, jump over that. So it makes a difference. 7 years to become prolific. So we should look up how cold hardy is ginseng? Like what temperature can it survive in the ground to? That will let you know.
It's really prevalent like in West Virginia and stuff, right? So I would assume that it could grow in Northeast Ohio, but I'm not so sure. Maybe I messed up.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I think you can. I think you're right about West Virginia. And
it's like that's where it's mainly grown. I think West Virginia and Virginia, parts of Virginia anyway.
Mm-hmm. So, well, then let's go with it's going to pop pretty soon.
I hope so.
Yes.
If it does, I'll be like doing a dance. My neighbors are going to think I'm funny. Like I'll just be out there like, yes. Because every day I check for that every day.
But I think it's like an ongoing experiment too. Like we always, minus 40. Thank you. So it, unless it rotted because it's too damp and wet, you should be good. But like rhubarb, I had a hard time growing. Like now I have I have one beautiful rhubarb plant. Been trying to grow it for 5 years. I was putting it in a place that was getting too hot. And June, July, the sun was beating down on it. Finally found a place where it gets some shade. It stays a little bit cooler and it's growing crazily well. And sometimes that's what we have to do is keep trying and just find the right location.
I have 2 things of rhubarb in the front of my barn and it gets absolutely no sunlight. And it is growing. I don't know how it's doing it, but it's getting 0 sunlight. It just looks like really big leaves bordering my barn. And I'm like, sure, it's just thriving over there. I don't know how, but it's doing it.
Well, so we would say to people, less sun for rhubarb is probably better.
Maybe, yeah, for sure.
So Quirky Bill Wooldog goes, ginseng is grown in Japan, and they have seasons similar to Ohio Valley.
Oh, okay.
So
maybe it's just too early too, guys. It's still pretty cold out there yet. Maybe it's in dormant season.
Yeah.
And it just needs to pop up. Maybe I'm just being impatient. So
minus 40, you're good.
Gary, I love what you do on your page to teach everybody and help everybody out. I love what you do. And you teach everybody in it. It's so easy to understand what you're talking about to the beginning gardener, to the more advanced gardener, that, hey, put stuff in your pocket kind of thing. And I just love what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And that's like when I decided to create the channel, I just want to, help people have a better experience, growing food. And, some things don't need to be a 25-minute video if it only should take you 2 minutes to explain it. And then I also respect people learn in different ways. So often I repeat the same idea in the video, but, I've heard both ways. You repeat yourself too much and thank you for repeating yourself because it takes a while for me to learn that way.
Honestly, I think the way you explain things is the best. Like, that's how I learned about the different sprays for the garden. You did a great job explaining that, and it was to a level that I could understand. It wasn't like all scientific-y, and
Yeah, appreciate it.
yeah.
I think what happens is when a person's first learning, you might hear it in the beginning, but you don't necessarily know that's important to know. And then you get to something else and you're trying to think about that. So by the time the end of the video comes, is you've missed stuff. So I'd like to just kind of recap and repeat and, take it to your garden.
I see a lot of Gary's videos, aphids. You see like a strawberry plant. Those are those aphids right there. You see them all. And then you see another picture, the same thing.
So the aphids are probably the worst. My plum tree, one of my plum trees, probably 10 feet tall, 10 feet span, covered in aphids. Every leaf was covered in aphids. And that just kind of reinforced. And it wasn't sprayed, nothing like that. There was not one ladybug. And that's kind of reinforced the idea that, yes, ladybugs and predatory insects help. But after the tree was kind of devastated, the ladybugs showed up and did their thing, but the tree wasn't really saved. So balancing between spraying and good insects and bad insects is sort of a dance. Like anybody tells me I never spray, I never have a disease, I never have a pest. They're either very lucky, and I don't know where they're growing, or they're just growing plants that don't have any pests or anything in that area. Don't have any pests or disease that affect those plants. Every gardener is going to run into pest and disease problems. And it's not going to be because you're doing something wrong. They just show up.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, like with tomato plants, I had run with a lot of them. I had ran into a lot of disease issues. So I started doing hybrids. And since I started doing hybrid tomatoes, not all of them, I still do some other types, but since my main crops have been hybrids, I haven't had any disease issues whatsoever.
It's a good way to go. And I like to, years and maybe, I don't know, I might have done a video 10 years ago and I left it up, and it was kind of saying you don't need hybrids. And looking back, I should have said you don't need to pay a lot of money for hybrids, because I think you do need them. They are made usually by people with a great passion, trying to figure out how to take the strengths of two plants. They're not GMOs. They get confused as being GMOs, but they're really a project of passion for people. And they create these really resistant plants for exactly what you said. And, I just want to.
It takes a lot of hard work to make a hybrid. It really does.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah.
So I want to give respect to the hybridizers.
Yeah.
It works.
A lot of them don't even taste good. That's the problem. They try it, all of a sudden they grow this, and all of a sudden they taste it, and I'm like, oh, that's disgusting. That's not going to work.
I still grow the other ones, but they're for our pleasure. My market garden is hybrids.
So, and some of them are good. Like the Matt's Wild Cherry was the core parent plant for a lot of, I can't remember. I don't think it was the Sweet 100s. But sometimes, I don't even remember the website, but sometimes you can find what plants are used for the crosses, and it's really, really interesting. But I just went back and I said, well, then I'm just going to grow the Matt's Wild Cherry. It is a great cherry tomato.
Yeah, it's amazing how many breeders are out there too. There's so many breeders. I noticed that when I'm on LinkedIn, I'm like, oh my God, look at all these breeders. It's crazy. Oh, and thank you, Peter Schneider at the Wiki Garden and Alfonso Nash at LinkedIn. So they've been commenting on LinkedIn. So that's pretty cool. That's been a great resource for us, Gary, is using LinkedIn. I never knew all these other people like trying to learn just like they do on YouTube, but just something different.
And most of LinkedIn people don't even have a YouTube. They are just the best in their field, and and then we've got them on our show. It's been really awesome.
That's I didn't know at all.
Yeah, it's been a great resource for a lot of things. Well, Gary, it's been 2 hours and 25 minutes.
We have kept the attention of 70 people. So thank you guys.
I had a lot of fun. So
yeah, it's been awesome.
And I usually go to bed by 10 o'clock. So this is great. Get up early, go out to the garden, and go to sleep.
Well, thank you so much, Gary, for spending all this time with us. And if you guys ever want to become a member, it really helps us out. We started at the Zucchini Club. No, wrong level. The Biochar, the Biochar Club at $2.99 and moving up. It really helps us out in a lot of ways. And thank you for Brian's Garden for making that super chat for us. That was awesome. And on Thursday we have Smoking Ed Curry, who grew the hottest pepper X as of right today. He's going to be on our show on Thursday, so hope you guys.
Nobody else grows the hottest pepper by Thursday.
We got a couple more days. And there could be something already out there. So with Jay Primo, I believe.
Yeah,
he might have the hottest pepper right now. So Garrett, just stay on for 1 second.
Sure.
Everybody, we'll see you guys on Thursday.
Thank you so much for being on the show, Gary. It's been awesome.
I had a
you
great
just
time.
have so much information, and I hope everybody out there loved it as well, because this is awesome. This is great. So thank you so much.
Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. Have a good one.